So chapter 2, section 2 is called Conditional Statements. And a conditional statement basically has two parts. There's an if part, and then there's a then part. Okay? We're going to call the if part the hypothesis, and the then part the conclusion. All right, so you have a hypothesis and a conclusion. The letters that you're about to see are basically representing a statement. So the first one they call P. So if P, then Q. And the P and the Q just basically represent any statement that you can stick in to the what we call the conditional statement, the if and the then. Okay? Once you have a conditional statement, you can do a couple things with it. You can rewrite it in what's called the converse. Okay? For the converse, you take the conditional statement and you basically just switch the order. So the conditional statement, you start with P, and then you end with Q. Thank you. So for the converse, you start with Q, then you have the P. So converse just basically switches the order of the two statements. And then the next one is called the inverse. The inverse, you stick a little wavy sign in front of the P. And then you stick a little wavy sign in front of the Q. That little wavy sign basically is read as not. So if not P, then not Q. And then there's a fourth one, the last one, called the contrapositive. And you do both things. You switch the order and you say not. So if not Q, then not P. Okay, so let's actually try it with a statement. Okay? So we'll call this example number 1. And we're going to do some writing. Oh, let me shrink it just a tad. Okay. So for example number 1, we're going to start with a conditional statement. State. And here's the statement. If you are in Mrs. Hoban's class, that's the hypothesis, then you are a great dancer. So that's your conclusion. Your if is your hypothesis. Your then is your conclusion. Okay? You are a great dancer is your P. You are in Mrs. Hoban's class is your P. You are a great dancer is your Q. Okay? Sorry, I said it wrong first. Okay? So we're going to take that conditional statement and we're going to rewrite its converse, its inverse, and it's contrapositive. Okay, so let's look at the converse. Okay, so for the converse, we just want to take the if the P, then the Q, and switch it to if the Q, then the P. So you're going to say, if you are a great dancer, then you are in Mrs. Hoban's class. All right, so you just switch the if and the then. Take the P, flop it with the Q. Any questions so far? No? All right, let's try the inverse. Okay? Inverse stays the same order if P then Q, but you're going to say not. Okay? So for the inverse, we're going to say if you are not in Mrs. Hoban's class, then you are not a great dancer. All right. One more, we've got the contrapositive. So the contrapositive, we do both. We switch the order of the P and the Q, and we say not for both of them. So if you are not a great dancer, then you are not in Mrs. Hoban's class. All right. So you just take your P, well, I would say first identify what your P and your Q is, and then switch the order for the converse. For the inverse, say not, and for the contrapositive, switch the order and say not. Okay? The other thing you might be asked is from Friday. Basically, you might be asked if your statements are true or false. Okay? So in order to prove a statement true, you can think of a million examples, right? But in order to prove it false, how many examples do you need? One. Okay? So just if you can come up with one, that will prove it false. So if you were given the conditional statement that says, if you are in Mrs. Hoban's class, then you are a great dancer. Is there anyone in here who might care to admit that they are not the best dancer? Thank you. Right? So you just, all you need to come up with one example of who is not a great dancer, and then